This is CHSR 97.9 FM here in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. This is Python's Paradise, your film and music show, and this is your host, Greg Gilbert, a.k.a. the Python Hyena. And folks, I've interviewed a lot of people from various films and music and pop culture, but every once in a while I find an internet personality that just stands out. And one of my very favorites, and one of my brother Andrew's favorites, is on the phone with me right now. I bring you Brad Jones, a.k.a. the Cinema Snob. How do you do, Mr. Cinema Snob?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much. Yeah, talking about movies like Caligula on my channel definitely makes you stand out.
Yeah, we also going to do an intervention today, too, because I understand you get a massive porn addiction, like Strokey Man, you know. I mean, come on. We have to have an intervention.
I think I'm one of the few people who can legitimately say, like, yeah, I really just kind of watch the non-porn parts.
I'm sure you do.
Those on YouTube. When I'm reviewing them on YouTube, it's not like I could show the sex scenes on YouTube. So I'm mainly just like kind of riffing along and talking about the like sketch and plot parts of the movie. I'm one of the few people who can legitimately use that as an excuse.
Yeah. You'd like director James Wynorski of Chopping Mall, because he's directed all kinds of porn parodies like The Bear Winch Project and The Hills Have Thighs, among others.
Oh, yeah, he co-wrote one of my favorite comedies from the 80s, which is called Screwballs.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I had him on and to talk about Chopping Mall, and I was looking through his credits, and I was like, does this guy really do that? He's quite proud of it.
Oh, yeah, Chopping Mall's a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've had a few people on from that movie, like Kelly Maroney and Russell Todd, and, you know, and I've had him, and I had Dick Miller on 5 months before his passing, so I was very fortunate there. But
I kind of grew up on a lot of those Skinamax movies as well, some of them that he's been a part of. I was at the right age when those came out in the early 90s. So, oh yeah, like I could go on talking about his movies and like, you know, like Fred Olin Ray movies, Shannon Weary movies, Shannon Tweed movies.
Well, you know, I know. I just got back from Comic-Con in Toronto, and I've done a couple. I've lived here in Fredericton, New Brunswick, my entire life. Born in the early '70s, and it wasn't until I'd never traveled until 2017 when actress Lisa Langlois from the movie Class of 1984 she invited me to be her assistant at Horrorama, and she and I are now really good friends, and
oh, cool.
Yeah, I've been to Horrorama twice, and she told me I should go to Comic-Con because it can expand my brand, and I just got back from there, and you just got back from Wizard World, didn't you?
I did, and I'm about to go to a couple more too. I got C2E2 coming up this weekend. And then a couple weeks after that, I've got Wizard World St. Louis. I hit a bunch of the Wizard Worlds.
Does your wife think you're a whiz?
I guess it depends on what topic we're on.
I gotta say though, I love the convention scene, and I gotta ask, what's the oddest thing you've ever been asked to sign?
I was asked to sign someone's receipt once. I've been asked to sign. Well, this isn't really odd, but like, you know, like someone's cast. I signed someone's sword once. Sometimes I'll be asked to sign copies of movies that I was not in, and like that I was not in and haven't even really talked about, like on my site. Like, I mean, it'll happen where someone will bring a copy of a movie that I've spotlighted on my channel before, and I'll sign it. But then there's times when that's not even the case. I think someone asked me to sign a copy of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas once, and I just wrote down like, I saw this movie, Brad Jones.
I interviewed Lisa Hoyle from Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. She's a stunt woman, but you could see her during the trapeze scene.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I love that movie. But
yeah, that movie's great.
Yeah. So no, I love doing this, and I just wanted to get a little bit of your background before we start off and how you became the cinema snob.
Oh, right. Like, well, I started kind of near the beginning of YouTube. I've been doing this for a while now, and before then, I had made a few movies. I had made a few super micro-budgeted thrillers, these little exploitation movies that I did. And I was working odd jobs at the time. And this, like I said, this was kind of near the beginning of YouTube. And at the time, there wasn't a lot really in the way of spotlighting some old, like, 70s exploitation movies. So I wanted to do something with that because I had this extensive collection that I accumulated through the years. And I came up with this character called the Cinema Snob, which was a mixture of people that I kind of had encounters with personally from showing my a few of the movies that I did at the time.
Okay.
So I'd known some people from some like local film boards and stuff like that were a little snooty, like the character that I play.
Yeah.
And also a mixture of like when Siskel and Ebert would review something like Friday the 13th Part 4, and it'd be pretty funny because it'd make them so mad. I grew up watching that show, so the character kind of became sort of a hybrid of those things, really, just kind of a way to like sort of do this video riff on some movies and play this satirical character who is a bit pretentious and condescending and would probably rather be talking about any other movie really than those. And it certainly evolved over time. But yeah, when I started the show, it was, like I said, it was a lark. It was the idea of being able to do it for a living or even making money on YouTube wasn't even heard of at the time. So I did it for a couple of years because I really, really loved doing it. And I was also making other movies as well. And then after a couple of years, it turned into my full-time job. And I've been doing it ever since. And the show just keeps evolving into the different kinds of movies that it talks about, to where it's still really fun to do. I love playing the character.
Oh, yeah. My brother and I look forward every weekend to watching your episodes and seeing what next is coming up. I was going to have him come on and join us today, but he's getting ready for his wedding this weekend. So,
oh, nice.
Yeah, but no. We look forward to watching. We love the interactions, of course. I have a cat named Skittles, and you got Lloyd. How's Lloyd?
Yeah.
How's Lloyd today?
Oh, he's great. He's actually here right now. He was a second ago when I was talking. I was mildly distracted because I looked over and he was trying to get through the blinds. And he jumped down now. I think he's found something to play with right now. But no, Lloyd's still he's vocal, energetic. I'll be doing an episode here pretty soon that's going to be featuring Lloyd quite a bit. I have two cats. I have Lloyd and Chloe. Lloyd's the one who he's the most well known on the site, certainly, because like I said, he's very, very vocal, very bright-eyed, energetic, and Chloe, who's my other cat, who's also incredibly sweet, but she's very quiet. She kind of keeps to herself a lot. So I think she might be way more camera shy than Lloyd.
Yeah. Yes, you have a Siamese cat. I like Siamese. I don't have a Siamese, but I like Siamese. Some people don't understand them, but
Right. Yeah. I've had Siamese cats all my life. Both
Mhm.
Lloyd and Chloe are Siamese cats.
Yeah.
Ever since I was born, my parents had a Siamese Doc who they got a few years before I was born, and he lived to be 21. And then we had another Siamese cat named Woody, who's still alive. He lives back at home with my dad. And then Lloyd and Chloe, we got 10 years ago, maybe.
Okay.
So yeah, we got them about 10 years ago, and yeah, they're still going strong and still energetic and everything. But yeah, I love the Siamese cats. They're fantastic communicators. They're great communicators. They're very vocal. They always, they tell you what they're thinking. They tell you what they want and what's on their mind, and they're really, really affectionate too. They're great companions.
Yeah, I love those shots occasionally you have where Lloyd is watching something on television, his head's jutted up.
Yeah, I have an animated series that's called Lloyd.
Oh, do you? I
It's
didn't
a
know this.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
The animation was done by a team called ToonWorks, who's also on YouTube. And I wrote and created the series, and I play the voice of Lloyd as well. And it's about a Siamese cat who's a private detective, and his secretary is Chloe. Yeah, that ran for about 6 episodes. It's one of my favorite things that I've done. And whenever I would have it up on the TV, like watching some test footage or watching the completed episodes, Lloyd would jump up and watch it. He would sit on the armrest and watch the cartoon. So I think he knew it was about him.
Well, you know what? I like I said, my brother and I discovered you, and we used to listen to Decker's Shadow, and the internet
Hmm.
personality with the best hair. And I like Decker, but his recent review of John Carpenter's Halloween kind of left both of us sour on him. So
Oh,
yeah, because he panned it, and my brother and I just looked at each other and said, just listening to his rant on it, like he didn't get the movie, you know.
oh, wow. No, I didn't see that video. I've reviewed Halloween a couple of times. I have a midnight screenings review of it where we
Mhm.
reviewed it after it had a theatrical re-release, and I do have a Cinema Snob episode on it.
Yeah, but you know what? Here's the thing with you, though. You're not. It's because of your character. I think you don't leave me disliking what you're doing. I just came away
Right.
from him, and no offense to him because he's very animated. You know, he's fun to
Hmm.
watch, but it's just kind of like I don't think he got the movie because the stuff he criticized, I was just throwing my hands up at him. You know.
Yeah, mine's more. I mean, I haven't seen his episode on it, but I mean, just speaking from my own
Hmm.
particular episode, given that I'm playing this character, and especially in an episode like that,
Hmm.
where it's certainly more riff based and more like cartoonish nitpicking, I guess, where you can tell it's satire. Like you can tell it's not that it's written to be a joke, and
Yeah.
that no one would really kind of legitimately feel this way. It's an episode like that would certainly be a parody of
Hmm.
certain reviews of movies like that. Whereas there's other episodes I do that are certainly far more analytical and more serious. Funny, yeah, sure, but
Hmm.
like you look at an episode I do on something like God's Not Dead or Old Fashioned, where it's certainly more analytical. Like there is a lot of riffs in there, certainly, and jokes, but it is also kind of talking about what's kind of wrong with some movies
Yep.
like that. Then there's episodes like 1941 or Heaven's Gate or Mommy Dearest, where I'm kind of giving these reappraisals of these movies while still being in character, but you can tell by the way it's written and the way that the jokes are that it's me like really actually giving a lot of kudos to these movies, you can tell it's something that I like, but I'm conveying that through this very kind of snooty character.
Mm-hmm. To be fair.
Yeah.
No, we love your show. I got to know what was the first movie you did a snob episode on?
Burial Ground, and it's only like a 4.5-minute episode. It's an Italian zombie movie called Burial Ground: Nights of Terror.
Okay.
1980, 81, I think that came out, and this was at a time on YouTube when videos couldn't be longer than 10 minutes. So that episode's about 4.5 minutes. Also, those early episodes I did are rough because I was finding my voice in comedy and writing that kind of video and review and things like that. So you can tell I'm kind of trying to find my style and voice throughout a lot of those early episodes because I was way more used to doing drama and horror thrillers, exploitation movies, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, when I had the inspiration to do that character in that show, Burial Ground was one that it kind of stuck out to me a little bit, where I was like, oh, there's some really funny and outlandish stuff to spotlight from that. Mm-hmm. So I made that the first episode, and I think I might have written like 2 episodes in that same day. I want to say I also wrote an episode on Porno Holocaust because the Porno Holocaust was the second episode I did, and I want to say they were written like the same day, and maybe even shot the same day and posted only like maybe a day apart or something like that. But Burial Ground was that was the first one, and my wife's been crazy ever since.
You ever think about redoing those,
No.
Okay.
I know people who have done stuff like that, and I get it. I certainly get it. I do, because there's really not a single YouTuber, especially in the genre that I'm in, there's really not a single one of us who likes our early work. We're all kind of critical of our early work, so I get why people have redone older things I have. I don't, because those episodes should just speak for themselves. Like, it really kind of shows the evolution of the show.
Yeah.
And there's plenty. I have an endless supply of movies to last probably a million lifetimes. So I don't really need to go back and spotlight something that I already have. And I wouldn't want people to go back and watch the older episodes just out of curiosity anyway. So doing an episode with...
I was just thinking, if you wanted to go through and do Burial Ground again or Porno Holocaust, just to do a longer one, because my brother and I love your longer videos. Yeah,
those are better. Longer videos are great because you spotlight more of the movie. There's more stuff to joke about, mm-hmm. And you can certainly show some crazier stuff. Burial Ground I would maybe do just because it was the first episode, so that would make sense that maybe it could be spotlighted again, maybe as an anniversary episode or something like that.
Yeah.
But I did redo an episode once. One of our uncut and uncensored DVDs has I don't know if I can say this title.
Go ahead.
Bat Pussy.
Okay. My brother and I watched this. Yep.
Yeah, so I did redo that episode for the DVD because the DVDs are uncut, they're uncensored. I don't have to censor any sex or nudity or anything like that. And that I kind of used as a real selling point for that DVD, because that maybe is the worst porno I've ever seen. It's stunningly and grotesquely bad. It's in a fascinating way. Everything about that movie is fascinating. And what is so gross about the movie, you can't really show a lot of on YouTube. So I kind of use that just to redo that episode, show it uncut,
the director's
uncensored. Cut. Yeah, I mean, it was a total redo. It wasn't just the same episode again, but uncensored. It was a total redo. I could do new jokes, show scenes I couldn't before, and really kind of convey more about the movie. And also, like I said, it made sense in that particular case because it was made for a DVD, and that could be a big selling point for that particular DVD. But anything else that I've done that's on YouTube, like Porno Holocaust, Wanda the Sadistic Hypnotist, and things like that, I wouldn't redo them. They should just kind of speak for themselves. That's just simply what the show was like back then.
Okay. Well, I've been reviewing movies since 1996, and I didn't start here at the station until 2005, whenever they found out they didn't have a film critic. But I kind of fell into this podcast by accident. Yeah, I ended up, a former colleague of mine ended up with a connection through Riff Tracks, an interview with Tommy Wiseau of The Room.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, and I said to him, let's do this on the radio, not on the phone. Let's just do this on the radio so we could record it. And I remember after that, it's like, who else can I contact, And I remember, reaching out to. I wanted to reach out originally to females I had crushes on growing up, and reached out to Adrienne King of Friday the 13th and Lisa Langlois of Class of 1984. And Lisa's now good friends with me now. She's been on twice.
Yeah.
And I remember when Adrienne responded to me. It was on a long weekend in May of 2015. I remember just leaning back on my chair thinking, she responded. Because
crazy, right?
Yeah, and I was like, I would have been thrilled with just the Tommy Wiseau, but now I've done your number 268, so I'm kind of and I've gone from Tommy Wiseau to like Dick Miller and Ralph Bakshi's been on a couple times, and And when people have passed away, I do tribute interviews. I've done 4 on Zoe Tamerlis Lund of Miss 45, where her widow's been on 4 times, and the stuff I learned about her. Alfred Hitchcock's granddaughter's been on. Audrey Hepburn's eldest son's been on. Rowdy Roddy Piper's son and daughter have been on, and various things like that, which allows me to make these people part of my show, despite the fact that they're past. And
oh yeah, sure. Like I mean, it's crazy that we kind of encounter and get to know a lot of these people over time, given what we do for a living and everything. People that we kind of grew up watching from back in the day.
Yeah, but Tommy Wiseau, of course, was my first, and you want to talk about bad movies. I noticed you haven't done a review of The Room, and you kind of got to, man.
No, it's at this point, it's been pretty well covered.
You're tearing me apart, Cinema Snob!
Exactly. We've talked about it on midnight screenings before. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, we did a midnight screenings review of it. I think when they released like a theatrical riff tracks of the movie. And at this point, the movie's been so well covered by shows that are like in the kind of same genre that I work in on YouTube. There's really nothing fresh I could add to it necessarily. However, there is a porno spoof of it.
Is there?
That I would do. I would do that sometime.
As Tommy Wiseau would say, you act like you're the expert, Cinema Snob.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's called the bedroom or something like that, probably. Seems about right.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because I got a lot of topics I want to cover with you, but I did have a list of films here that
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about. One was The Room. Some of them you might even have on your list. Now, I've had Catherine Mary Stewart on here to talk about this movie, but The Apple.
Oh, yeah, that movie's great.
Catherine Mary Stewart is, she knows how bad the movie is, but she's willing to talk about it. Like, the director of the film, I guess, was upset that it didn't turn out the way he wanted and didn't receive the way he wanted, but she's got a sense of humor about it. But have you done that one yet?
I did. It's not on my channel right now because of some copyright issues, but a few years ago I did an episode on The Apple because every September I do a bunch of musicals.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was, I think, maybe like the first year I was doing musical month.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love that movie. Menachem Golan made that film. And yeah, like it comes, I think this is kind of said a lot about the movie, but it's one of those films that comes across like an alien has come down to Earth and has tried making something like Hair. It's one of those movies that's so uniquely strange and bizarre that there is a level of genius to it. Like, is it bad? Like, you know, certainly. But it's the kind of bad that takes a lot of creativity. There is a lot of thought put into it. There is a lot of ambition. It does have a style. There is some kind of genius to that. It's that kind of bad movie that only a very, very creative person can make. And some of the music in it is fairly catchy, to be perfectly honest. Like I can still think back on a few songs from the movie that are catchy and have certainly stayed in my head. But I love that era of musical, though. That late 70s, early 80s, like almost like coke-fueled, crazy nightmare era of musicals that were just that were just unique in how crazy a lot of them would get, like Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
Yeah, that was bad.
Starring Peter Frampton and the Bee Gees. Like, I love that era of musicals where they were just throwing stuff at the wall to see if it would stick. Like, it's it's like a product of pitching a movie while on a big coke binge.
Can't stop the music.
Like, yeah, where you're just like nailing a hooker on top of a producer's desk as you're pitching the movie to someone. Like, they're creative, definitely. Can't stop the music. Sgt. Pepper, The Apple.
Xanadu.
I'm a big fan of Xanadu. I love Xanadu. Xanadu is one of my favorite musicals.
Well, you mentioned the copyright issue. Now, I never had a real copyright strike. I've had a couple pictures that were copyrighted, but nobody's ever taken me to task on it or anything like that.
Sure.
Yeah, I've been, nobody's ever done that, and I never use any footage from the movies. It's just audio of me doing the interview and some pictures play across as the video plays. But what do you do to deal with the copyright? Because obviously you put a lot of work into these videos. Because I know your story with Nail Gun Massacre and whatnot.
Oh, yeah, that was a long time ago. That was about 10 plus years ago. And the Nail Gun Massacre was back. That was maybe like a 2009 episode.
Mm-hmm.
And it ended up getting taken down, and my channel ended up getting suspended because of that video, which was honestly, like, it was a blessing in disguise, because it was from that I moved over to a site called Blip TV. It doesn't exist anymore, but myself and a lot of others were on Blip TV back in the day because it was a big monetized platform. We could get revenue from it and everything, and it was really because of that I was able to start doing this for a living. And then Blip went away, and we went back to YouTube, which again was great going back to YouTube. Like, there's certainly a lot more rules that go along with being on YouTube than being on Blip TV, but the exposure is far greater. The revenue is far greater. It's just for us, the positives greatly outweigh any kind of negative issue that we'll run into on YouTube. Certainly, we can still run into copyright problems, and it's usually dependent on the company. And some companies are just harsher than others, or maybe they have a more strict content ID program, which kind of combs through YouTube and looks for clips of any kind of movie that they have. And when that does happen, you can submit an appeal to see if it goes through. If it doesn't, you can take a gamble and do a second appeal, or it'll show you what the clip that's in question. And sometimes that can be fixed by just simply kind of shortening the clip a little bit.
Okay.
It can be annoying. It can be a hassle, but it goes with the territory. And at this point, a lot of us have kind of learned what companies are easy to work with and which ones are a bit more of a headache. And for the ones that are kind of a headache, we'll usually just kind of stay away from a lot of stuff from those particular companies, or sometimes we'll just kind of take a gamble and just see how it plays out.
What companies are a headache?
Lionsgate.
Okay.
The Lionsgate, though, they just have a really strict content ID program. So I did an episode on Hillary's America.
Okay.
And that was kind of a headache to do because of their automated content ID thing. It was hard getting around some clips on that. But Lionsgate, knock on wood, Lionsgate has been a company that, like, if you go through a first appeal on it, they'll typically auto reject it, but you can do a second appeal. And we've had luck with second appeals on Lionsgate, but that process is kind of long. So it's usually worth it to just kind of be like, well, okay, maybe I won't do as much from Lionsgate just because the appeals process can be so long. And, we have a really quick turnaround time on doing videos.
Yeah.
Other times I'm like, well, I don't care. I'll just go ahead and do it anyway. I just did an episode on Leprechaun 2 that had DVD distribution from Lionsgate, and I'm like, well, it's St. Patrick's Day. I want to do a Leprechaun movie for St. Patrick's Day. I'll just take the gamble with it having to do with Lionsgate, and if it gets hit with the content ID filter, then I'll just see where it goes from there. But when you kind of know that going into some of these videos, to make your clips a little short, like shorter than you would usually have them. So it's really all just kind of about working around some companies that are a bit stricter than others, and just kind of knowing, like, what clips will be too long, which ones won't. I do this every week, so I do these videos every week. So it's just something you get used to over time, and you kind of know how to work with these companies.
So you play clips from when you do an episode, you do clips from what the film in question, and how long are your clips allowed to be?
It all depends on the company. Some you could probably get away with showing quite a bit. Others, not so much. I try not to have an individual clip be any longer than about 8 or 10 seconds, just to be safe. And that's really as long as you need anyway. So it was different back on Blip. You could get away with a lot on Blip, and that's why a lot of episodes that were made for Blip TV have trouble getting on YouTube, because they were edited during a different time. The clips were longer. There was like maybe some soundtracks in there that would be hard, that would be really hard to put on YouTube. So it's really just all about knowing how long your clips should be and just kind of having your own basic limitations for it. Now, if it's, if it's something like like last Christmas when I did an episode on Santa visits the magic land of Mother Goose, this nightmare Christmas thing from the 70s, or like Santa's Christmas elf named Calvin, or Fun in Balloon Land, or things like that. There really no one's going to come at you over. Then you can kind of give yourself a little bit of leeway on those. However, you still have to be really careful for, all right, Santa visits the magic land of Mother Goose. That actually remained in copyright limbo for about 30 days, even though it's a public domain movie, because there are third-party companies that try to take advantage of that and try to claim something that's not theirs. That can still happen with those, but at least with those, it'll typically get cleared up pretty quick because it's in the public domain, or you have to wait for the full 30 days for the hit to expire. I just put up something from my archives that was on public domain movies, and again, this same third-party company that likes hitting things like that will roll the dice and try claiming something even though it's not theirs. That'll still kind of happen. Some sharks will try to go after it, but when that does, it's just kind of it's going to turn out fine. It's just kind of a mild annoyance.
Are you going to do Santa Claus and the Ice Cream Bunny?
Probably not. Only because kind of like the same thing with The Room. It's like it's been pretty well covered at this point, and I don't know what I could add to it that hasn't already been added. I tend to stay away from stuff that's primarily known for either Mystery Science Theater or Riff Tracks, because again, they've been well spotlighted. And I grew up watching Mystery Science Theater. It's one of my favorite shows. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what I could add to something like Manos, the Hands of Fate that hasn't already been added.
Okay, what about John Waters, something like Pink Flamingos?
Oh, I did do an episode on Pink Flamingos a while back, 2011 maybe, 2000, okay. Somewhere around there. I did an episode on that. It's not on YouTube. It would probably have a hard time being on YouTube, considering how kind of graphic that movie gets. Mm-hmm. I could see that running into a problem where like advertisers might not want to advertise on that video. Because that's something you can run into on YouTube as well, is like something that may not be very advertiser friendly. And that all just comes down to knowing what is too much to show in the way of sex and violence. You kind of get a feel for what would maybe cross over into not being very advertiser friendly. And even then it'll like, okay, I just did an episode on Hellraiser, which is a very, very, very bloody movie. Mm-hmm. But and that review is pretty bloody too. But I kind of knew where to sort of cut and not let linger too terribly long. And yeah, with it being Hellraiser, it had to go through an ad revenue process to get approved for it, but it ended up getting approved. And if it doesn't, you just either make some tweaks or you just submit it again to see if it'll get approved on a second try. So yeah, there's at this point, I've been doing this for so long that I think I've slightly become kind of an expert on some of this stuff.
Well, John Water, here's my story on Pink Flamingos. Like, I met Mink Stoll at Horrorama a couple of years ago, but I couldn't seem to nail her down to do an interview for my show. But what I did do, I did a tribute interview on Cookie Mueller,
Oh,
who
okay.
was the chicken victim in it. And
Yeah.
I interviewed her son, Max, because she's passed away. And I didn't know this,
Yeah.
but Max said he's in the movie. And I said, really? And he said, yeah, I'm the baby that they sold to the lesbian couple.
Oh, that's funny.
He thought he said that's his claim to fame. He thought it was funny too, but he said it's a little hard to
Yeah,
watch
yeah.
that scene with his mom though.
Hmm.
Yeah, but
Oh,
no.
that's really funny.
Here's one I got to throw out to you. I saw this at Horrorama, and it was the first time I ever heard of it. And I just showed it to my brother who does up my videos. And he thought the lead actor was so bad in it that he said, keep playing it. I want to see how bad this guy gets. It's something called
Yeah.
Wild Beasts.
Wild Beasts. Yeah, I don't know if I saw that one.
From
I don't think I've seen that one.
It's from 1984.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I would recommend you watch it. It's about some drug of some sort that gets into the water line and animals end up drinking it. They break out and the animals go on a kill spree. And you could tell, like, the scenes were close up of jaws on limbs. You could tell it's fake, but you could tell the animals aren't really aren't really dangerous. Yeah, but
Oh, that's funny.
the lead actor he's trying to be serious, but you can't take him serious. He's got like a partner who's constantly eating chips and snacks through the movie while they're talking about carnage. This is a movie I highly recommend you take a look at. It's called Wild Beasts.
I will. That does sound like it's right up my alley.
Yeah, I think you'll get a kick out of it. Here's one I got to bring up to you too. I don't know if you're familiar with the Trailer Park Boys.
Yeah.
I love the Trailer Park Boys. Well, they're in the Guinness Book of Records right now because they did like everybody talks about the Wolf of Wall Street having so many profanities. Well,
Yeah.
Swearing at the movie has got a record of 935 F-bombs.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah. I recommend you do an episode on Swearing at the movie if you get the chance.
I would definitely check that out as a curiosity. I did a movie in I think the most I've had in a movie. I did a movie in 2007 that was a 80s cop movie called Midnight Heat, and the movie's about 97 minutes long, I think, or something like that, and it had a lot, like not like 900, but few hundred maybe. I think I might have gotten a little carried away on that. But someone's got a video on YouTube of all of the uses of the F-bomb in that movie.
Well, I definitely check out Swearing At because it's a movie that it's about censorship. It's a Trailer Park Boys playing themselves, the real life personas. But
okay.
Yeah, I personally liked Swearing At.
Yeah.
But this movie to me is something I think might be up your alley. Here's one for your next musical month and musical March in September. Here's one called Score, a hockey musical.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
It's got Olivia Newton-John in it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, that would be a good one to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind spotlighting that. Yeah, I could get a lot of fun stuff out of that. I haven't seen it, but I do know what you're talking about.
Well, I got to admit, it was an interesting idea for a movie, but incredibly cheesy, you know?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
What about the Attack of the Killer Tomatoes movies?
Oh, that would be the first couple Attack of the Killer Tomatoes movies are great. They're honestly really, really clever, and they're very funny. And it would be fun to do an episode on Attack of the Killer Tomatoes from the point of view of my character, the cinema snob, who is trying to take the movie seriously and doesn't realize that it's a parody film.
Yeah.
it's one of those movies that you see pop up on like worst movies list.
I love
but it always comes across as whoever made this list hasn't actually seen the movie, because the movie's a parody. So is the second one, and they're both really funny parodies as well. I really like both of those movies a lot. I think that they're really, really smart at being send-ups of that kind of movie, like like a 50s, 60s drive-in monster movie. And I've always thought about doing an episode on Attack of the Killer Tomatoes to, again, like I said, like do it from the point of view of a character who doesn't realize that this is a parody and is taking it far too seriously.
I've interviewed Casta Dillon, who was one of the writers of the film, and he said that he was at one of the cons last year. I interviewed him last August, and he said that I guess there's a plan to possibly make another one. And
because aren't there like 4?
Yeah, I've interviewed him from Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, and I've had Crystal Carson on from Killer Tomatoes Strike Back.
Yep.
And I really like those movies. I think they're really funny. And I don't think they're meant to be taken too seriously, but some of the stories, I don't have that interview up on YouTube yet. It is going to come though. But he talks about the getting complaints about the tomatoes looking too fake, or you could see the wheels underneath them. He said, "Yeah, that's part of the point."
Yeah, exactly. Like that's what I'm talking about. When I see it on some lists of like, worst movies ever made, I'm like, so you haven't actually seen the movie then, have you? Because they're complaining about stuff like that. No, those movies are worth checking out. They're a lot of fun.
It's interesting you mentioned not seeing a movie. I've had Eva Ball on my show twice, and I really I love Postal. I think Postal's one of his better films, I think. And I like Blubberella as well. I personally think Eva Ball's a really nice guy. And like I said, he's been on this show twice. I have not seen House of the Dead or Alone in the Dark. They might be in your element, but one of the things that he had told me, like, because he always did these things where he challenged people to boxing matches, and here's the thing: he didn't challenge people to boxing matches because they disliked his film. He challenged people to boxing matches who panned his film without seeing it.
Sure.
And I had said to him, that reminds me of the fact, I don't know how many times I've read a review on, say, Friday the 13th Part 3, where they say another batch of counselors being offed off, and there weren't counselors. Yeah.
I remember seeing that kind of thing all the time. There's only a few that have actual counselors.
Yeah, Part 6 actually had kids at the camp, like...
Yeah.
But, yeah, you would see that all the time, another batch of camp counselors, Yeah,
I do remember seeing that all the time. Yeah, and I interviewed Eva Ball once a bunch of years ago, and he was certainly a fascinating guy to talk to.
I like him. I think he's a nice guy.
Sure, yeah. There's been a couple of his movies that I thought were fine. I liked the first Rampage movie. I thought that one was pretty good. I haven't seen a lot of his movies.
I love Postal.
I wasn't much into Postal.
No, I love Postal.
But I've seen it. I've seen it. I saw it not long after it came out. But no, he was he was an interesting guy to talk to. He's entertaining for sure. Man, he was nice in the interview. It was really early. We had to interview him too, because it was like maybe afternoon his time, but it was like 3-4 in the morning for us or something like that. So we had to kind of set our alarms to get up at probably like 4 in the morning or something like that to talk to him. So I was pretty tired in the interview, but it was a fun interview to do.
What about Gilles? You ever think about doing that? Because that's one of the worst movies I ever seen. Or Pearl Harbor is one that I think is one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
Pearl Harbor, no. Gilles, I might, because I actually kind of like the movie. I saw Gilles in the theater.
Yeah, same here.
And because me and my buddy went to go see it because we heard it was so bad. Like, it was, they were talking about that movie nonstop about how bad it was. And me and my friends were the types where even back then, that just makes us want to go see the movie just out of curiosity, you know? And we went to go see it. It had its problems, but I mean, we laughed a number of times in the movie. And it was one of those films where when it was over, I was like, all right, like I see why somebody wouldn't like it, certainly. But I laughed a handful of times. I even liked some of how dark it kind of got in some sequences where one dude in the movie just straight up point blank gets shot in the head and a fish just starts eating his brain that's in the fish tank. Like, the movie's not this rom-com, like it's this dark comedy. And it was advertised like a rom-com because of the whole Bennifer thing that was going on at the time. And we left the movie and we said, I understand why it doesn't have great reviews, but the fact that the reviews are so bad reads more like it's just kind of an indictment on how annoying that relationship was at the time, more so than the actual movie, because that was all over tabloids, Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez, and it was tiring. It was tiring seeing that in the news all the time, seeing it dominate the tabloids and everything, that if they weren't in any kind of relationship that was kind of old and annoying at the time, I don't think that movie necessarily would have gotten good reviews, but I don't think there would have been as many people saying it's one of the worst movies ever made, because I've probably seen 10 movies in the past month that are worse than Geely.
What about Mother with Jennifer Lawrence?
Oh, I like that movie.
Oh, did you?
That movie was crazy. Yeah, that movie was insane. I loved sitting through that movie, especially because I went to religious schools, kindergarten through my senior year, so I studied theology and religion and everything and Christianity for 12 years. I wasn't raised religious, but I grew up going to religious schools. So all that stuff I kind of grew up with a little bit. So I was endlessly fascinated to see basically this crazy retelling of the Bible from beginning to end, just in this insane movie about vanity and celebrity worship, and having all of these allegories for things like Cain and Abel and the flood and the crucifixion and Revelation and all of that. I was really digging it. I liked it a lot, honestly. It's one of those movies I understand why somebody doesn't. I get it.
I remember looking across the theater, and there's this older woman there, and you could just see her with her hands up, shaking her head like, what the frig?
Yeah. It was, maybe the movie shouldn't have been sold to a mainstream audience.
Yeah.
Like, maybe that was their mistake. But no, I recommended it. I really liked it.
Here's another musical March in September movie, From Justin to Kelly.
Yeah, that one's on my list to do at some point. Yeah, that movie's not very good. I think From Justin to Kelly is maybe the movie people see in their heads when someone brings up Geely.
Yeah. Well, they both come out the same year, and both were equally shitty. And speaking of shitty, Freddie Got Fingered.
Yeah.
That on your
Freddie
list?
Got Fingered. I saw that in the theater when I was on a date. I saw some bad movies on dates. I was on a date when I saw the remake of That Darn Cat.
Oh, that was bad.
It's really bad. Like 96, 97, that movie came out.
Yeah.
And Freddie Got Fingered. I saw Freddie Got Fingered is one that, like, yeah, it's bad, definitely. Yeah. But it's a bad movie that I at least respect, because it is him basically purposely trying to make the worst movie ever made. Like, it is Tom Green making this giant troll movie. Like, he was popular at the time, so a studio gave him a chance to write, direct in, and star in his own movie, and basically just to be this kind of genius troll, he made this movie.
I met him when he did a stand-up. Yeah, yeah.
Huh?
I met him when he did a stand-up here. So.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I would love to meet Tom Green. Honestly, that's like I said, that's at least a bad movie I can. I could admire the stones on it.
Now, I've heard you mention the name Joe DAmato before. Now, when I was at Horrorama last year, I saw a movie screened there after Wild Beast called Absurd, and I really liked it. But I'm going to tell you, the Cinema Snob would have a field day just criticizing the stupid kid in the movie.
Oh, probably. Yeah, annoying kids are fun ones to kind of do a lot of Cinema Snob style jokes on, like House by the Cemetery. To Catch a Yeti is one that's got an annoying kid in it.
Yep.
Yeah, that's there's a lot of material that can be derived from like annoying kids in movies.
Well, I really liked Absurd, but I think that might be up your. I like the fact though the heroine ended up being a woman who was bedridden. But this kid in the movie, I was like, oh my goodness, could this kid get any more annoying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that happens quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done a few Joe DAmato movies on the show. Porno Holocaust. Erotic Nights of the Living Dead. Let's see. I've talked about Caligula: The Untold Story before. Now I like Joe DAmato movies.
Yeah. Are you gonna do the 50 Shades of Grey movies?
Nah, it's too. That's a little too mainstream.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, I've at this point on the show, there has been mainstream movies that have been spotlighted, but usually usually it's like a Pure Flix movie, or
we're gonna get the Pure Flix in a minute here.
Yeah. Usually it's like a Pure Flix movie, or sometimes when I just want to try out something different, like the Sex and the City movies, or if I feel some inspiration to talk about something, maybe, or then I usually will. But I would never do something like 50 Shades of Grey or Twilight or anything like that. That's a little too mainstream on the nose for me to do.
Okay, what about Orgazmo?
The Trey Parker movie?
Yeah, I just interviewed Toddy Walters, who was the voice of Winona Ryder in South Park, the movie. And that was where I kind of discovered Orgazmo. I checked it out, and I thought it was hilarious.
Orgazmo's hilarious. I don't know if I would necessarily do a snob episode on it, but it's one I would maybe do a midnight screenings on, or talk about it in some capacity, because that's a very, very funny movie. I recently showed it to my wife. My wife was raised Mormon, and so I'm like, oh, you should see this. You would really like this a lot. And yeah, she loved it. It's a really clever movie.
What about Pro Wrestlers versus Zombies?
I've never heard of that.
Okay, I've interviewed Cody Knox, the director, twice on my show. And I got his first interview up on YouTube. And he did a movie called Pro Wrestlers versus Zombies. And he had actual wrestlers like Rowdy Roddy Piper, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Kurt Angle, Matt Hardy, Shane Douglas. And they end up in some weird account, end up in this prison. They got to fight these zombies, you know. And you see Kurt Angle do the ankle lock on a zombie and rip the zombie's foot off. And
yeah.
Roddy Piper blasts one with a coconut, of course.
Yeah.
That is a movie you might want to check out. It's right up your
Mhm.
alley. But I love the fact that, like, Pro Wrestlers versus Zombies, just something right there. It's got midnight audience written all over it.
It does, yeah. There's a lot of movies like that I haven't seen because some of them kind of feel like they're more so in the uh, meta genre where they're kind of aware, they're kind of self-aware about the movie that they're making, and sometimes that can be funny. Certainly, I've seen it work. I mean, we were just talking about Attack of the Killer Tomatoes
Mm-hmm.
earlier. I've seen it work before. Other times, uh, it can maybe be a little too much. Like I feel like I'd want to watch something that's maybe a little bit more genuine.
Like Hulk Hogan
Um,
movies?
well, I mean outside of the wrestling genre. But like usually when I see something that has a title that's almost like the clickbait equivalent of a movie title,
Yeah.
where it's like fill in the blank versus zombies. Yeah, there's a lot of those I've seen that are maybe a little too self-aware for my taste.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know, like Scout's Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse, or like I said, like take any occupation and add versus zombies to it. um,
Pro Wrestlers versus
some of that
Zombies
can
might be up your alley, though.
yeah, I mean, I'm not against checking anything out.
Mm.
Because sometimes that stuff works, and then other times it's like I kind of want to watch something that's maybe a little bit more genuine.
Oh, then you definitely got to check out Wild Beasts I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, oh yeah, like that's totally that one's totally up my alley.
Now we got to talk about PureFlix. Now here's the thing with me. I grew up in a Christian home and I was baptized. I
Yeah.
still read my Bible, but I also
Mhm.
I love horror films. I love comedy, especially slasher films and teen comedies.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I find my big issue with okay. I absolutely hate Movie Guide. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them. They blocked me. I think they are a shitty publication. That's my opinion.
Sure.
Yep. But they're the kind of people that always slap 4 stars on these PureFlix movies, even though there's not one bit of filmmaking technicality gone into any of them. It's just
Right.
bias. And PureFlix, I'm going to say I love The Passion of the Christ. I did like that.
Uh-huh.
That was very well
Yeah.
done, but that was also Mel Gibson behind that. So
Yeah.
it had some good shots and stuff in it and lighting and whatnot. God's
Yeah.
Not Dead, I have a soft spot for because you get to see Hercules and Superman play basically assholes, and I thought it was a little bit of a stretch for them, so I kind of
Uh-huh.
like that in it. But
Mhm.
I agree with a lot of stuff you say about these movies, especially the audience that targets, that recommends them, despite the fact that they're poorly done, and they excuse it because it panders to them.
Yeah, exactly. They're less when you have movies like God's Not Dead or Voiceless or off the top of my head, there's one coming out here soon called Unplanned.
Yeah.
I can only guess maybe it goes along with this category, where it's less that it's promoting Christianity, because it's really not. The war on Christmas movies could fall in this category, like Christmas with a capital C or Last Ounce of Courage, where it's not about promoting their religion or what's right about religion, what's good about Christianity. It's not about promoting Jesus' message or love or anything like that. It's about making you feel like a victim.
Yeah.
it's about putting forth a persecution complex. It promotes fear.
Mm-hmm.
It promotes fear. It promotes bigotry, really. Some of them do. It pushes a lot of very fear-based false narratives in a lot of them. They are very much straw man movies, and it's not very responsible. It's not very responsible, and it also it makes your religion look bad, because it's billed as a Christian movie, but there's really not much that's Christian about these movies.
No.
It's about really just kind of pointing out to different groups, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you, and here's why, and here's something that will rile up this fear this fear and hatred in our audience. And now there's ones that certainly the God's Not Deads of the world are the ones that are the most popular to talk about, because they're very much kind of they are the most popular, but also they're kind of among the worst in this new wave of a lot of religious movies that are out. But there are ones that are decent. Like I go see all the ones that come to Springfield, and sometimes you get about the same level of filmmaking in all of them. I mean, really, gone are the days of the Cecil B. DeMilles of the world.
Yeah.
So the level of filmmaking is roughly similar in a lot of them. At best, you feel like you're going to get like maybe a pretty good-looking TV movie, kind of. But when you go see a movie like that, they're graded on a different scale, because it's not like a lot of them are going to have these real cinematic, epic feelings to them. But maybe they'll have like a good message. Maybe the acting will be good. Maybe it's coming from its heart being in the right place. Like something like All Saints, the John Corbett movie, like that had a good message to it. Even God's Not Dead 3 was not that bad. Like that actually did feel like it was real fleshed out characters having very philosophical differences from each other. And it was a movie about forgiveness and redemption. Whether it was very genuine about it, I don't know, because it took them 3 movies to have a story like this. Also, considering their next movie is this anti-Planned Parenthood thing, sometimes that can kind of show you where the heart truly lies in some of these companies. But, at least, a movie like God's Not Dead 3, at least, look, I'm here to really just kind of review what's in this movie and if it does it well. And that movie, I'll give it this, like the message that it had in the movie was far better than in the other 2 movies. That might have had a lot of outside influence in it. Like it did have a different director and a different set of writers than the first 2 movies. So that I think made all the difference in the world. But I mean, we went to go see enough of these movies that we made our own parody movie of them.
Yeah, I know. We're going to talk about Jesus Bro here in a minute, but
yeah.
But what was the one? Unashamed. I found even that was offensive.
I'm not ashamed.
Yeah, I found that offensive.
I thought that was one of the least offensive ones.
Oh, they took the, what was it, the Columbine shootings, and they turned it into their little agenda. And of course, Movie Guide promotes it, blah blah blah, because of course they do, But
yeah, that movie was. I saw it. I did an episode on it.
Yeah.
I was expecting it to be a lot worse than it was. Like, yeah, okay, it certainly took a tragedy and made kind of its own narrative about it, but there's countless movies that do the exact same thing, that take something tragic from the past and lends their own voice to it. With that movie, there's some crappy things that they do in the movie. It's very two-dimensional and easy what they do with the 2 shooters in that movie. It's as light as a feather. but the movie wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I thought the movie I was picturing in my head was way worse than what I was seeing, at least what I was seeing. And I said this in the review, because it was about that girl who was killed at Columbine. And at least this was a movie about a very Christian character doing very, very Christian things. At least it was that. So that, I give it props for that, because it did that way more than a lot of other Pure Flix movies did at the time. Way more than the first two God's Not Dead movies. Way more than any of the War on Christmas movies. It was hard for me to get that mad at the movie, because at least it was a movie about somebody who seems to be a very, very good person. Now, yeah, there was really lazy stuff in that movie involving the two shooters and all of that. And I get some of the criticisms about it, but I've seen far more
blame movies and video games on society,
Right, yeah, it does that, and it does. There was a few other weird things in that movie, but it was just that was just a very, very strong case of the movie just not being nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be.
It kind of reminded me, like, John Grisham went on an attack on natural-born killers back in the day, and it's like, yeah, and then he writes A Time to Kill, I mean hypocrisy written all over, But
sure, yeah, I love natural-born killers.
Yeah,
I also like A Time to Kill.
I wasn't a big fan of A Time to Kill, but I did like Natural Born Killers, but not an easy movie to watch. But I am going to say this, though. I remember everybody was going nuts over Fireproof, and I watched Fireproof, and I was like, what a shitty movie, It was.
Right.
So, I remember one woman saying, oh, didn't you cry at the end of it? And I was like, yeah, that's money I won't get back. Yeah,
I saw that movie on a bus. They were playing it on a bus I was on when I was coming back from Champaign, Illinois one time. So I saw part of it on the bus, at least, because the trip was shorter than the actual movie was. Yeah, maybe I'll have to spotlight that sometime. I've done a bunch of other Kirk Cameron movies.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Like, and this is something, again, we're a counter movie guide, because I remember the scene where the guy the doctor pulls the wedding ring out, and we discover, oh, he's really married, and I was like, it was so cheap for them to write that in, like, let's resolve this way. It's so lazy. And it was funny, because it got me looking up stuff on the internet that I've never done or not necessarily into, but I'm fascinated by it. I thought, why wouldn't they do something challenging, like make it look like his wife cheated, but maybe she really didn't? Do something challenging, instead of being lazy. And it got me looking up stuff on cuckolding online. It opened up that through Fireproof, but
yeah.
Funny, huh? But he did.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to spotlight that one sometime.
But Saving Christmas, remember when that got all the bad reviews and it was a horrible movie? But Kirk Cameron going on Rotten Tomatoes and it backfired on him.
Oh yeah, because he wanted to manipulate the audience score. Yeah, that kind of backfired on him a little bit. That was pretty funny, because that was a really, really bad movie. But that was a bad movie that it was at least fun to watch.
Yeah,
like, it was funny bad. It was just like these Christmas conspiratorial ravings of a madman. And it was, I've seen it more than once. It's a good party movie.
Or a party killer. Which brings
Only if you're watching it with a group of buzzkills.
Yeah. Well, you know what? This brings us to Jesus Bro. Now, you've done the Cinema Snob movie and you've done Jesus Bro. We'll start with Jesus
Yeah.
Bro because I love the fact you did the whole drinking out of the empty cup and concealing part of your face. That is done so badly in Saving Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah, we did because let's see, we made that movie in fall of 2016, and we had gone to see a bunch of those PureFlix movies because we have a show where we review all the new movies that comes out, and the PureFlix movies and a lot of the religious movies they come to Springfield, and it reached a point where we were noticing all of the different cliches and tropes of those movies, even some of the ones I saw in school way back in the day. And we had this idea to make this satire of them, where we didn't want to do something like, like a Friedberg Seltzer movie or something like that, or like a scary movie or something like that. Like we wanted it to have a very linear plot, certainly with characters in it that was telling a story, and then certainly does have a message throughout it, but doing it using all of the cliches and tropes of a PureFlix movie. And even shooting it like a PureFlix movie. Our cinematographer, A.J. Young, he is a brilliant cinematographer, and he perfectly mimicked the look and style of those movies. Like, he studied all of those movies to really get the look of them.
Oh, that
down.
must have been exhausting for him.
It was.
Studying those movies.
Yeah, it was, definitely. He he said it was some of the hardest research that he's had to do.
Yeah, but I love the concept of this, and I love the fact that the Dove Foundation actually reviewed it. But you brought up a lot of interesting points, like when you mentioned the Santa Christ, and you said, well, yeah, but he appears in a form that guy could understand. That makes sense to me,
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I love the Santa Christ character, too. The Santa Christ character is created by my friends Doug and Rob Walker, who run Channel Awesome, and they do a show called
Nostalgia
Critic.
Yep.
And Santa Christ comes from that. I've always loved that character, so I loved being able to put Santa Christ in this movie, in this religious movie satire. And yeah, the context for it being that the movie it's got a common plot line that you see in a lot of these movies, where it's about a guy who's a very, very popular atheist, and he has a near-death experience and comes back as a Christian and tries converting a lot of people, but then, goes through a lot of persecution because of it. And Santa Christ, it makes sense in the movie that, yeah, there's a reason that God, as Santa Christ, has chosen this figure to appear in front of the celebrity atheist, because it's also a movie that it parodies internet culture as well.
Yeah,
because I'm very well versed in that.
Yeah, and of course the Cinema Snob movie as well.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but how many movies have you done?
How many movies have I done? I've written 4, 5, 6, 7, about 10 maybe. I've directed about 6, I think. Yeah, I've directed 6 movies, written 10, and directed 6 of those.
Okay. How did you connect with the Nostalgia Critic?
Oh, because that was just from getting picked up on Channel Awesome. I got picked up on Channel Awesome at about 2009, so about 10 years ago. And I've been doing the show for a couple of years, and I moved away from YouTube to Blip TV once the old YouTube channel went away. And that was at the suggestion of Noah Antweiler, who ran a site called The Spoonie Experiment.
Okay.
and he was also on Channel Awesome at the time, and so I built my own website, thecinemasnob.com, and created a bunch of different new shows to kind of to have more than one series, so I could be frequently updating the sites. And we've been doing newer and newer shows for over a decade now. And so I just simply sent in an email to their email address, and I believe it was Rob Walker did like the screenings at the time for people to submit in their material to see whether or not they would get picked up, and then it would go to like a vote between the 5 higher ups to see if they'd pick up newer talents, and that's what it was. I wrote and submitted a few videos. They watched them and really liked them a lot, and we got picked up pretty quick, and we've been on there ever since, and we've become really great friends over the years. We're constantly collaborating and working with each other. We do crossovers on each other's channels all the time. We do. They were in our movie Jesus Bro.
Yep.
Doug Walker was in a movie I directed a year or so ago called Disco. They're in the upcoming movie we got coming out called Another Cinema Snob Movie.
Yes.
So yeah, we're always hanging out and working together on things.
Are these movies on Blu-ray?
No. Blu-ray it's different to do a Blu-ray than it is for DVD. I do get asked that a lot about whether the movies are on Blu-ray, and they're just, well, some of them are just on our website. A lot of the movies I've directed are just simply on our website. But the ones that are on DVD, that are just exclusive to DVD, yeah, they're just on DVD. Because DVDs, there's a company that we use that manufactures the DVDs, and then they send it out to the people who order them. Whereas Blu-ray is a lot different. Blu-ray is a lot more expensive. You have to do the shipping yourself. Like a company will manufacture them, certainly, but they send the products to you, and you have to do the shipping and all of that and handle all that costs. And right now, we don't. It's not cost effective for us to do that right now. We also don't. We don't really have the time to devote to that either. Like maybe if we had a very, very limited run, then
Get Lloyd and
maybe
Chloe to
certainly.
do it.
Yeah, exactly. So right now, it's just simply more cost effective and beneficial just to do DVD.
Okay. Yeah, because every week my brother's like, any new Cinema Snob? We always watch the Cinema Snob, Joe, and I love the fact that you're I love the fact, and you mentioned this in your response to the Dove Foundation. You're not making fun of Christianity. You're making fun of these movies, because I'm a Christian, and I don't find this offensive at all. I get what you're doing, but I find they don't. They automatically play the victim.
Yeah, when they did that review, or of when the Dove Foundation did the review of Jesus Bro, and then we did a video. We did a video talking about it, and it was a lighthearted video where we were talking about the Dove Foundation and their review. The CEO of the company wrote to me afterwards, and I think also left a comment as well. And she was very, very nice. And she goes, yeah, sorry, I think it was one of our more humor impaired reviewers who reviewed that.
Well, at least it wasn't the people of Movie Guide. Those are the worst, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I don't know if I've ever seen Movie Guide.
Yeah, I'm not they review movies based on Christian standards. So you got movies, Pure Flix, always getting 3 or 4 stars. But it just amazes me at some quality stuff that they give low star ratings to. It's funny because I remember one time they were talking about the controversy of Wolf of Wall Street and all the profanities, and I was like, get it right. swearing at had the most profanities, the most F-bomb.
Yeah.
And I sent their one of their editors the trailer for swearing at, and I said, "Won't this get your top prize?"
Sure.
they tweeted back and said, "This is not very Christian" or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm swearing at. But it's,
Oh, that's funny.
yeah, I just threw it out to them. It's like, you know what? You want something offensive? Check out the Trailer Park Boys. But but anyway, yeah, I love the fact that you make these movies because you got quite this character you play. And I noticed you got a Cinema Snob doll. Do you manufacture that?
No. Some fans made that for me and brought it to me at one of the conventions. That was Wizard World
Okay.
Madison, I believe. I believe that was Wizard World Madison, Madison or New Orleans. I can't remember which one, but no, yeah, they made this Cinema Snob doll and gave it to me, and yeah, I was really, really happy. It was so cool. I gave them a bunch of free DVDs too.
Does it have a little Lloyd with it?
What?
Does it have a little Lloyd with it?
No. It's just the snob, and the background is like the pattern of the snob chair, and it really does look a lot like me. And it talks too. It's got a button on it you push and it talks. But yeah, I got that in my office, and I've featured that on the show a few times.
You know, it's funny because I remember I was having a slow movie day years ago, and I saw a movie that I cringed getting through it. But I would have paid to see your review of it because my brother and I watched your review of this movie twice and just laughed our ass off. And that's Oogie Loves and the Big Balloon Adventure.
Oh, yeah.
Hated the movie, but loved your review.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I saw that movie in the theater. They gave we were high when we went to go see that too. Like,
you need to be.
They gave us some weird looks when we went in there.
Yeah, I saw that in the theater, and I think it was a really slow review week for me to see that. But oh my goodness, that was hard to get through.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I was going to mention. We talked about your movies. Okay, my brother and I now ventured onto other parts of your channel. You know, I love the midnight parts. I haven't shown them to my brother, but I've sat down. Number one, it just feels kind of cozy. Just you guys just sitting there in your car talking about the movie. Is that inspired by Saving Christmas?
No, we were doing that show years before Saving Christmas came out. We started that show in like 2011, I think. And it's just us in the car, and it is, a very casual, free-form way to talk about these movies, and it's very first impression based too, because it's right after we get out of the screenings. We just go to the screenings and get in the car and talk about it. So there is that gimmick to it as well. And, it's comfortable, certainly, depending on what the weather is. There's been times where it's been really cold, and there's been times when it's been really hot in there. So we started that, like I said, around 2011, and it was it just kind of organically became a series because there was a midnight release for Thor, and so me and Jared Foyles, who was a reviewer who used to be on our site, we went to go see it at midnight, and we talked about it in the car afterwards, not thinking it would turn into an ongoing series, because we were doing just regular vlog reviews at the time, just not necessarily in the car, and usually it was just me talking about the movies. And then the following week, we noticed they were giving midnight releases of other movies that were coming out. It was like Priest and Bridesmaids, I think. And that's when we noticed, like, they're doing this with every movie this summer. And the first 2 years we did the show, it was just during the summer. That was the only times they were doing it. They weren't doing it with any movie that was coming out in the fall or the spring or the winter. So for the first 2 years, it was just a show that was around during the summer months. And the screenings were literally at midnight. That's where the title came from, because we would go see these movies at midnight. And it's it's amazing we actually hit all of these screenings, like us like waiting around until midnight for these movies. And some of the people on our site had to work the next day, but we were young enough at the time to where we could do that and then they would still go to work the next day. Then it was around 2013 they began doing it year-round. I think it was the January that Texas Chainsaw 3D came out. And from that point on, it became a weekly series. And the screenings were no longer at midnight. They would start doing them at 10, and then they would start doing them at 7. Now sometimes there's kids' movies that get an advanced screening at like 4 p.m. But we'd had that title for a few years, so we still held on to that title. And it's not the most popular show that we have, but it's one of my favorite ones to do, because it gets us out of the house. We go to a movie, we talk about it afterwards. Even when it's a movie that we know is going to be bad, or a movie that turns out bad, it's still fun to talk about that kind of thing afterwards. And since there's at least a few new episodes of it every week, there's a big back catalog of them. So it's a show that's successful based on its watch time and back catalog alone. So it works out very well for us having a show like that.
Okay. Yeah, I enjoy it. I find it's very personable, like you're sitting there, because I enjoy going to midnight screenings, but if you did that at midnight, I tell you, I hope you wouldn't have to work the next day, because I tell you, you could be out.
Some of them did. I didn't. This was, even back then, this was my full-time job. Mm-hmm. But other people on the site did. They had to go to work the next morning, but we were younger back then, so it was kind of no big deal, really.
Okay. Now, my brother and I we're watching the Brad Tries, and number one, I gotta say, I love your wife and her sense of humor. I love it when you do the ones with her. Yeah. How did you meet her?
We met just we just went out on a date and hit it off relatively quickly. We just kind of casually met and shared a lot of the same interest in things, and had just an instant connection with each other. And we've been together let's see, a few years now or more. It's great being able to work with her on the site too. It's great that, this is part of both of our lives. We can do a lot of stuff together, like watching these movies and talking about them afterwards. And, the audience, they like her a lot when she shows up, and she really likes doing it too. So it's fun having her on the show as well.
Well, she's got a good sense of humor, and she really gels well with you. I actually went and saw, when I was in Toronto, because we didn't get the movie Greta here, and I really wanted to see it.
Gotcha.
And I went to see that because I watched you two talk about it in your midnight screenings, and I love watching you two go back and forth. But even on the Brad Tries, I love it when you and her do them, because she'll take this tiny little bite and you'll stuff the whole friggin' thing in your mouth.
I just shove it in my mouth. Yeah, the first time we did that, I didn't tell her that I was going to do that because I wanted her reaction to be genuine. her reactions to things are really funny, especially when it's something that grosses her out.
Well, I loved it when you guys were trying the donuts, and then you did that shot of the donuts. It looked like a massacre of donuts, and you said we could take them down to the shelter or something like that. But just the shot of that box, it just looked like a massacre.
Yeah, that's a good show to have on the site because I like having new material up about every day on the site, and that's a really good show to have because it's certainly fun trying out these weird foods and drinks. Like it's cool being able to try out a lot of this stuff from around the world, and even gimmicky foods that they'll release in stores or maybe some fast food places or stuff like that. It's cool having those even for like let's say decades from now. It would be fun looking back on that and being like, oh, look at this weird thing that like McDonald's had like 20 years ago, in that regard. Or look at this weird soda that existed like a couple of decades ago. Like, It seems like it'll be a cool show for it to be, like just kind of an archived look at all of these different gimmicky foods that were out and drinks as well. Also, it's a nice one to have too because it doesn't take long to. It's a very quick show to do. Each episode is maybe somewhere between 3 and 5 minutes long on average. So it's nice having a show like that is on the spot. It's quick to do. It doesn't take very long. It's just kind of a reaction off of these different foods and drinks. Yeah, that's a good show to have. When you're like us and you like having new content up about every day. It's good to have a show that, one, is easy to do like that, and two, that the audience enjoys as well.
I remember you had Nostalgia Critic for a few, especially the Oreos.
Oh, yeah. Here's why that happened. So I was up there. I was a guest on their Top 5 show. We did Top 5 Best Cereals. And
yep, I saw those.
Doug and I, yeah, and that was really fun to do. And Doug and I did a midnight screenings on Serenity, the Matthew McConaughey movie, and then Tamara Chambers, who's also on Channel Awesome. She and I was going to guest on her show. Tamara's never seen, but there was a really big snowstorm up in Chicago that night. So and Tamara lives a bit a ways from where we were over at Doug's, and the roads were just simply super, super nasty. So we had to postpone me and Tamara doing a video together. I think we're going to make up for that this weekend because we're all doing C2E2 together.
Okay.
So I had these Oreos with me that I was going to take back to Springfield and do a Brad tries of them here in my hometown where I live in Springfield. But because of the snowstorm and we weren't able to do this, me and Tamara weren't able to do this video, I said to Doug, I was like, well, hey, you want to do a couple of Oreo videos? And he's like, hell yeah. So yeah, we shot this really quick. That's another reason why that show works too. Because again, like I said, it's a fun show to do and the audience does really like it. Also, it's good to have a show like that can be a very spur of the moment show in case something like that happens. That's a good show to always have in your back pocket. So Doug and I did a couple of Oreo videos, and yeah, those were fun to do.
And you had Trump wine.
I didn't even know that was a thing until I was. My wife is from Virginia, and we were there visiting some months ago, and we just happened to see that in the store, like the ABC liquor store there in Virginia. And I was like, oh, well, I definitely got to do a Brad tries on that. So I bought a bottle of that and took it back here to town.
Yeah, I enjoy those. It's funny because you're involved in movies, and I'm actually part of 2 movies right now, too. The Friday the 13th movies right now are going through a lawsuit between the original director and screenwriter. I had Victor Miller, the screenwriter, on the show last
Oh.
year. Oh, nice guy, really nice guy.
Cool.
But
Yeah.
I've interviewed a lot of the Friday the 13th artists, and I had Debbie Sue Voorhees on here 3 times, and she announced 13 Fanboy, which is after Never Hike Alone came out and was streamed online, did so well. It was a great Fanboy movie. Debbie Sue is doing 13 Fanboy about a crazed fan going after alumni of the Friday the 13th films and trying to kill them in ways.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's going to have Debbie Sue's going to be directing it, and she's going to be in it. Tom Matthews is in it, C.J. Graham, Kane Hodder, Judy Aronson, Tracy Savage. They just signed Corey Feldman, and they got Dee Wallace to play the heroine. And I've had Dee Wallace on the show, and I met her at Horrorama last year. When I found out Tracy Savage was in it, and I had her on Boxing Day 2017, but when I found out Tracy Savage was in it, I had such a huge crush on her. I went on Indiegogo, and I'm now a co-producer on that movie.
That's very cool. That sounds like something I would like a lot. That sounds like something up my alley, because even on my end, I've always wanted to do a movie kind of like that, only more so from like the social media angle, because I've had to deal with a lot of crazies.
Oh, have you?
I've had to deal with it, some of it fairly nightmarish and psychotic, and I've always wanted to do something like that, because I've done a couple of movies that revolve around social media. I did Jesus Bro, and the upcoming Another Cinema Snob movie does definitely, and those are both comedies. Jesus Bro is a slapstick comedy, and it's a parody of the Pure Flix movies. Another Cinema Snob movie is a dark comedy, is a dark horror comedy. And I've wanted to do one that's like a straight up like thriller like that. There would be like kind of a social media based like stalker thriller. That would be, I've always wanted to do something like that. So this movie that you're talking about here, that sounds like wildly up my alley.
Well, you can go on Indiegogo and you can support it if you want to, but you get your name on the credits. But I found out Tracy Savage was in, like, oh man, I gotta be part of this. So I've interviewed several of the people from it already. So I was like, I had to put my name on it. So I'm very happy about that.
Cool.
And the other one that I'm got my name on, I don't know if you're familiar with James Balsamo. He directs a lot of low budget, somewhat cheesy horror comedies, like Cool as Hell and Bite School and Catch of the Day and The Lich and stuff like that.
Sure, yeah.
I've had him on the show in 2017, and he it's funny because I was sitting here, I work nights, and I was on my lunch break, and I got this message from him asking me if I would mind shooting my own death scene on my phone and sending it to him for Cool as Hell too. And I just stared at it, and I was like, I knew he'd had a lot of people like Linnea Quigley and Tom Savini and people like that doing cameos in his movies, and I was sitting there like, why me? And
sure.
So
why not?
Well, I called him because he was up, but I called him and I said, "What's the context of my death scene?" And we talked about it, and I shot something and sent it to him. But I was kind of honored because he enjoyed doing my show, and he just thought of me, and I was like, "Okay, I'll get my brother to shoot this." I sent it. I got the idea for my death scene from watching Linnea Quigley do her little bit in it. So I was like, yeah, so it was, and I'm now associate producer on that, and I've only been doing this podcast since 2015, but it's like, I'm wondering where it's gonna go, because it's like, wow, like,
sure,
it's amazing when you start something and you start believing in yourself as the blocks start to build.
Sure, yeah.
So I've enjoyed that, but is there a way to help fund something like a Cinema Snob 2 movie or something like that?
Oh yeah, that is Cinema Snob movie 2 was Indiegogo backed. Same with our movie Jesus Bro.
Okay.
And we had success in both of those campaigns. It involved, a lot of promotion. It involved a lot of promotion, especially with another Cinema Snob movie, because the budget was much higher on that. The budget was much higher on another Cinema Snob movie, and I was doing a lot of live streaming, like every weekend, like multiple days, was, taking questions from audiences and, promoting their works. And so, yeah, both of them were Indiegogo based. But then there's really micro-budgeted projects that I direct on my own. I directed a movie about a year ago called Disco.
Okay.
That was directed like my earlier stuff. It's kind of the same style I have whenever I'm directing something. It's point and shoot, like really not much of a crew, just person there with a camera. And that was filmed out of pocket. Like I financed that myself. That had a budget of about $5,000. And a majority of that, like 90% of that, was to rent out a discotheque.
Are you going to have
Chicago?
Are you going to have your wife and Lloyd in these movies?
Well, my wife is in. Yeah, she was one of the leads in Disco, and she's one of the villains in another Cinema Snob movie. She plays a cannibal farm girl in another Cinema Snob movie.
Okay.
So yeah, that was cool. She's got like a scene where she's wielding a chainsaw and plays, like the flirtatious country girl who lives with her shotgun wielding dad. Only they're cannibals. Yeah. So she acts. She's been in a couple of my movies.
What about Lloyd? Does he act?
Well, he is a private detective. He's an animated private detective. Now Lloyd might have a small role, like maybe a cameo appearance in another Cinema Snob movie. He had a cameo in Hooker with a Heart of Gold, which is a movie I directed in 2000. When did I direct that? 2011, I think. 2010, 2011. I think I made that movie. 2011. Yeah, he had a cameo in that. He wasn't in Disco because we didn't shoot any scenes at our house.
Well, here's a question. Can I help support, and could I get my name in the credits for another Cinema Snob? Because I'd like to help you out. I'm a big fan of your work.
Well, thank you very much for that movie. That movie's already been shot.
Okay.
That Indiegogo, that was one of the perks on our Indiegogo, but that campaign ended like last summer, I think.
Okay, that's okay. You'll probably have some other project coming up, so.
Oh yeah. We've got a movie that I wrote that'll most likely be our next bigger budgeted movie. Ryan, for movies like Jesus Bro and another Cinema Snob movie that go through, Indiegogo, they have much bigger budgets, professional crew, professional cinematographers. Ryan Mitchell, who's my friend and business partner, and he's a trained director as well and a professional editor. He's the director of those bigger projects that we have. He's the director of another Cinema Snob movie.
Okay.
He's the director of Jesus Bro. Whenever it's really micro budgeted, like just out of pocket with like no crew, then it's usually me directing because that's kind of my wheelhouse. That's kind of like that. I wouldn't know what to do with a big budget like another Cinema Snob movie, but you give me a couple of grand, I can make a movie about some people in a discotheque. But the next big project that we'll do that would be like me writing and Ryan directing is like it's a horror comedy that's a parody of Hallmark Christmas movies.
Go for it. Go for it.
Yeah. That'll probably be the next big project that we do.
Are you I don't know whether you're maxed out. You're on Facebook, right?
Yeah. Facebook.com/The Cinema Snob. I'm also on Twitter at The Cinema Snob.
And I know you
And
get a
our
web page.
Yeah,
Yep.
thecinemasnob.com, and our YouTube channel is really where everyone goes. We only get about 10% of our views from our website, thecinemasnob.com. Everyone pretty much goes to our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Stoned Gremlin Productions.
Mm-hmm. You mind if I add you on Facebook, or are you maxed out?
No, go for it.
I'll do that. Are you under Brad Jones, or are you under Cinema Snob?
Brad Jones.
Okay. All right. Okay, I'll do that. Do you get any charities you're involved in that you want to plug?
I do. I do promote like the Siamese rescue charity. When I was on a game show a couple of years ago, and that was my charity. So whenever I get asked to plug one, it's typically the Siamese rescue for Siamese cats.
That's a great charity. I love Siamese cats. My cat's not Siamese, but
Yeah.
I had a neighbor that had a Siamese. I loved the cat. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned crazy experiences online and whatnot. Is there anything that stands out you want to talk about? Because I never thought that you'd have those. I gotta know what I might have to prepare for.
Oh sure. I mean, we all have. If you've been doing this long enough. I mean, there's people who are in the same genre that I'm in and who do similar stuff as me that have gotten it worse than I have. Really, any kind of craziness I've had has probably been pretty light comparatively, especially if you have a channel that especially if you're someone who has a channel that maybe deals in sex and politics or something like that. You're likely to get more of a hassle than I will necessarily. But I have, like I had, some crazy person showed up at our house about a year or so ago. That was fun.
Oh.
Showed up at our house about, a year or so ago. There's been, here not that long ago, there was someone who called 911 pretending to be me. And I wasn't even in town at the time. Plus, they were luckily it didn't get that bad because the cops they picked up on it fairly quickly enough because they got part of my name wrong. But still, like, cops were sent to like my dad's place, my grandma's place. So yeah, I've dealt with my fair share of crazies before, but there's people who probably get death threats about every day. I haven't gotten to that level yet, but there's been some craziness.
Oh, gee. I got one more question, because you've done a lot of the conventions. What celebrities have you met that just blew you away?
Oh, geez. Off the top of my head, most celebrity encounters I've had have been very, very, very good. They're typically incredibly approachable, incredibly nice. Joel Hodgson's one I met, who was very down to earth, nice guy, really easy to talk to. I do a lot of the Wizard World conventions where the MC at Wizard World is Kato Kalin. And he's very nice. He's very fun, very nice. He's a really, really sweet dude. Has a wicked sense of humor. Always very energetic. You know, he loves talking to people. He loves people coming up and striking up conversation with him. So I see him about every month at these Wizard World cons. Other than that, Huh. So Samantha Newark, who is the voice of Jem from Jem and the Holograms, like
Okay.
one of the sweetest people I've ever met at these conventions. We're booth neighbors at a convention once a couple of years ago. Nicholas Brendan, we're booth neighbors with him one time. He was very, very funny.
Okay.
Very funny, very, very easy to talk to and to hang out with.
Well, hopefully they'll be able to get you up on my way. Do you ever? Are you familiar with where New Brunswick, Canada is? We're ahead of Toronto.
I only know of it by name. I couldn't tell you where it's at.
You know through me, right? You just heard of it when I brought it. Well, you know what? It was such a pleasure and honor to have you on here today. Like I said, my brother and I are huge fans of your work, and I'd like to encourage you
very much.
Yeah, I want to encourage you to keep doing it. And like I said, when you get your next movie going, let me know. And if it's on Indiegogo,
I will, totally.
Yeah, because I'd love to back you on a project like that, and see,
no problem.
Yeah, like I said, it's an honor and a pleasure, and keep doing everything you're doing. The reviews, take all my whatever suggestions I gave, and
you got it.
The Brad tries, the Midnights. Keep doing it all. There's no complaints on my end.
Oh yeah, no problem. Thank you, and thank you so much for having me.
And maybe next year, I'll have you back on again. I'd love to have you back.
Oh sure, yeah, anytime. Just shoot me a message anytime.
Yeah. Before I let you go, could I get you to do a plug for my show?
Of course. Hey, this is Brad Jones, a.k.a. the Cinema Snob, and you're listening to Greg Gilbert on Python's Paradise out of New Brunswick, Canada.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for the honor, and like I said, keep doing what you're doing because you're awesome at it. You're like our favorite YouTube channel we go to, and love your work. Love your work.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. And shoot me a message anytime. I'll come back anytime.
Absolutely. Well, you take care, and you guys find something to try to eat and massacre.
We will.
Take care, and Pat Lloyd.
Always. Have a great week.
You too. You take care.